that dust. It's perfect.
You know, it's interesting. You know, I always like to talk to young filmmakers, and many times they'll say, you know, the filmmaking began as a hobby, something I was screwing around with. Mm-hmm. When did you realize that this was more than that for you, that it was something you wanted to devote your life to?
I actually never really had this as a hobby. I've never actually made movies just for fun. I was really into movies and watching films and things of that nature, but I never delved into it. And once I actually did, I went all the way in, and I kind of put, my first idea was, my first one was Infection, and my only idea was that I wanted to be in theaters. I wanted to have a trailer. I wanted to be like a real movie experience.
Sure.
So I shot the film, shot another trailer, shot a few sample trailers, put them at the beginning, and that was really the start of it. But so it was never really a hobby. It was always something that I really wanted to pursue.
Well, you're lucky in that regard then.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it's hard to keep going, mm-hmm. Because we know that, you know, film is very much a collaborative effort, and you run into, I think, so many roadblocks mm-hmm. as an art form. What is it? Was it easier to start, or is it easier to just keep going? What do you find as far as keep going? Your motivation.
I think it's easier to keep going because to start you can run off emotion.
Sure.
You know, when you run off emotion, it's exhilarating, but you know sometimes the emotion fades, but you still have to get the work done. You still have to make it a routine. So it's tougher to keep going than to start. For sure.
Sure. Well, you know, I think that's reflective of life too. There's so many things where you hit those roadblocks.
100%.
Yeah. Well, so you've been doing this. So what advice do you have for people who want to get started and maybe can't?
I don't think anybody can, because it's so cheap nowadays to actually just buy a camera. And if you can't buy a camera, you can use your phone and make a skit or an Instagram skit or a Snapchat. Anything you want to do is pretty simple actually. For me, I think it'd be more about being consistent with it and taking it seriously. Mm-hmm. And once you keep going, there's a finish line at every race, I believe. So just get started is my motivation.
Well, you know, and you're so right how cheap things have become. I remember Francis Ford Coppola many years ago got a hold of that. I think Fisher-Price put out a camera for kids, and he said, pretty soon we're all going to be doing this.
And he was right.
And we are. So what lessons have you learned that you can impart? I mean, you haven't been doing this long, but still, it's a very much every day you learn something. What lessons have you learned that you can pass on to people?
I think production is maybe the most important part. It's really important that you don't want to shoot something with a great script and they can't see, they can't hear. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's really important. But I would say, even saying that, I would say don't let technology run your film, because it's also still about the creativity. It's still about telling a story, but you have to make it presentable. It has to be something that people can look at and enjoy. So I think that's important.
Well, and as we said, even though it has become cheap, it's still a collaborative thing. Mm-hmm. Where'd you find the people that you can work with, and what have you learned about them? Because you've got to have people that you mesh with, or else this just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I think I met a lot of people through school. I went to Urbana High School here in town, and that was a good place to meet people who were kind of not so much interested in what I was into, but they kind of wanted to help me out, wanted to work with me as well. Mm-hmm. And I've met a lot of them sometimes on Facebook, sometimes people through Craigslist. I do a lot of posts on Craigslist for projects, etc., and they come from Chicago and different cities and stuff like that, so we can all work together. And I make those relationships last, because it's important. You'll need them in the future.
Help! 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 Somebody help!
Where are you gonna go, huh? Nothing out there for you. I saved your life. You owe me.
I didn't ask you to!
You didn't have to. I needed to help you. I wanted to.
You came too late! You should have saved her, not me!
You've been doing this for a while. Mm-hmm. What personal attributes have you found that you have that contribute to you being a good filmmaker?
Okay.
And how do you foster those things?
Right. I think to be a good filmmaker, you have to be organized to a degree, because there's a lot of stuff you have to deal with, a lot of different phases of the project. You have to have empathy as a storyteller, I believe, because it's really important that you are connecting with the person that you are portraying.
Sure.
And even as the world builder, you're still portraying that person, not just the actor. I think it's really important that we as filmmakers, directors, etc., we show consistency and leadership, because we are literally leading a group of people, and it's important that they trust you. It's important that they believe in what you're doing as much as you do. So that's really important to me.
Oh my god, bro! I'm thinking we throw back a few limeritas tonight. Get fucking toasty!
Yo, I have class all day tomorrow, man. No way. No way.
Duh, dude, so do I. I figure we get drunk tonight, and tomorrow we'll wake up feeling refreshed.
No. No. Just
Really?
no.
Really?
I have to get a 4.0 this semester, or I'm fucked, okay? Fucked. I can't focus on partying and bullshit, okay? No way.
Damn, don't worry about it, my chocolate brother. It's gonna be fine. This year's gonna be epic. I'll make sure of it.
Please, no.
Work hard, play hard.
No.
Work hard, play hard. Come on, work hard.
Work hard, play hard.
So how does where you live affect what you make as a filmmaker, and what goes into it, as opposed to Los Angeles, which is really, considered the mecca of filmmaking as far as America is concerned?
I think it's actually pretty easy. It's easier to shoot outside of Los Angeles, because inside Los Angeles you have like a lot of permits, you have a lot of rules that you have to abide by. In Illinois, you can easily go like to a field somewhere and shoot something, to a barn somewhere and shoot something, which I've done several times. I think it's just easier. In LA, you'll probably have more support, just because everyone's trying to be a part of something, and Illinois is a little bit more scarce. But I think shooting-wise, it's easier and a little bit more relaxing to shoot in Illinois.
Well, yeah, and I think then also you've got you have a distinct perspective as well,
Right.
something that's not, perhaps jaded or too finished like it becomes in Los Angeles. And,
Okay, so you're referring to storytelling more so.
Well, either or.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think storytelling from the Illinois perspective, I think you'll be a little more grounded, a little more based in reality, and maybe in LA you might have more of a fantastical view of things,
Right.
which is, I think, almost a detriment to film sometimes. I'm really into the more grounded, gritty type of film, so yeah.
So you're more into the grounded, gritty type of films. What makes a film great for you? What are the things, when you're watching a movie, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for a lot of emotion.
Yeah, yeah.
Literally, that's really, I'm looking for a lot of emotion, believability. So like, I'm not so into Avatar. I think it's a great movie, but I'm not huge into fantastical things, like above my eye level type of thing. So I like movies that are really human based, ground level, and it's more about the person than what's going on in the story. Yeah.
So then, what inspires you then? What would you say were, some influential films or performances that you've seen, and how that's affected you?
I think Daniel Day-Lewis in almost anything, but also There Will Be Blood is an amazing portrait of just human, his desire to get a thing and watching it tear him down in the same film is really powerful. I'm into those type of stories. There Will Be Blood. I think my favorite movie is probably West Side Story, which is, it's not so grounded, but it's still realistic. Has a lot of the dancing is a little bit extra, but it's a lot of fun though. I love it. It feels like it could actually be taking place somewhere. So those are the type of things I'm into.
Well, so then I have to ask you, what do you think of Spielberg's upcoming remake?
I like it though. I like the thought of it. It just depends, because sometimes Hollywood, they make decisions on changing things, etc., and that may not be a great thing, but I'm excited for it. I'm actually really excited for Ben Affleck to redo Strangers on a Train, which is one of my favorite movies as well, from Alfred Hitchcock. He's redoing that, and it's a pretty easy movie to remake, I would assume, just because the concept is pretty simple, but it's tough. It's going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, if you're following in Hitchcock's footsteps, you are biting off quite a bit.
You got a lot of standards to live up to, but it's a great, I really love that movie, so I'm excited to see it redone. A lot of people hate when it's redone, but if it's done well, I'm cool with it.
So what did you see this past year that knocked you out? Or was there anything this past year? I mean, a lot of people have been going on and on with their Year of the Endless, saying it was a great year. I didn't think so.
I didn't think so. I didn't think it was an amazing year for film, honestly. I think some of the films that I saw were pretty good. I wasn't blown away by anything, honestly, so I just have to... this year I was just kind of just watching things for just general entertainment. Wasn't really trying to find anything that really spoke to me this year.
Did you see First Reformed?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty good?
I will say, see that as soon as you can.
Okay. I've actually been scrolling past it a few times, like, should I watch this?
Yeah, watch it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, from what you were just describing about Daniel Day-Lewis, and this is going to be right in your wheelhouse.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Ducks! What about the carrier? You got money by now!
So when you get angry at a movie, what is it that triggers you? I mean, are there common things in cinema today that you're like, oh my God, I can't bear that, or what is it that will draw that reaction out of you?
I don't think there's anything too much that I kind of can't stand about movies. Like, I try and give all movies a chance, really. I think bad casting or bad acting is something that I really dislike watching, just because it's hard to enjoy the movie when I know that you're like reading some lines or something like that. I can't say that there's anything specifically that I just can't stand. Yeah.
So how did this love of movies for you get started, and how can we perpetuate that in future generations? I think one of the most encouraging things I've heard you say today is that you're referring to older movies, and my fear is that those movies are going to be
That's my fear too.
forgotten. We've only got Turner Classic Movies anymore that focuses on anything that's made before 1970 or 1980. And these generations have no idea the treasure trove
Of all
that's,
the movies
that's
that are
out there.
yeah.
So what sparked that thing in you, and how do we keep that going?
I think what sparked it in me was just, I've always been into story. I've always been into like the human experience. And I think film is the one art form that contrives all of like the human experience and puts it visually. You add music, you can add choreography. All these things are put together to make a film. And I think I just appreciate that. I think the way to keep that going in the future is to continue to show the older films, to continue to talk to kids, just to kind of open their minds in different ways. You don't have to like teach them how to make a movie per se,
Sure.
but possibly just show them something different that they might not have seen, a black and white movie or a silent film or a musical, and it just opens their mind up to different things.
Yeah.
So I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, we live in an age where so much is accessible to us, so that really does need to be taken advantage of.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. The age of information, we can really see anything we want to. So it's important that we choose the right stuff, I think.
So when you're on a set, how do you ensure that you're going to have a fruitful collaboration with everybody? How are you going to make sure that everyone comes together and pulling in the right direction to get your vision up there?
I think it's important to have a plan. I think it's important that you have a plan, and each person on set knows the plan. They understand their job, the job as a whole for the entire team, and I think it's really important that you, as the director and as the head guy in charge, so to say, is that you are focused in your plan, so that you are moving in the right direction at all times. Setbacks happen, of course,
Sure.
but it's tough to do that. It's tough to handle those when you yourself are underprepared.
Right.
So you get there and you're able to do a lot of things.
You've got to be the positive thing.
Exactly, at all times.
Yeah. As you're talking about this, I keep thinking back to The Disaster Artist,
Yeah,
that
exactly.
film,
Yeah.
and those scenes of on the set, and how disastrous
crazy
it
it
was,
was,
yeah,
yeah.
and how
Because he was flustered the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's like people follow what you show.
he's flustered. But I guess that brings me to another question. I believe he was flustered because he was so close to the material and loved it so much. Obviously, you're close to any subject that you're going to be filming.
Right.
So being able to separate, be professional, and still foster that whole,
That emotional side.
yeah, that's got to be a tricky little high wire act, I would think.
I think it's tough. It should be tough at the start. I think once you get to set, you kind of have to leave the emotional part to the side just a bit, just because you've already made your plan. You've already made your plan on what you were feeling before, and now is the time to execute. So once you get to that part, it's tough to really execute and still be like considering everything. So you got to kind of be focused a little bit.
I hear this a lot from people who go to the movies, and I make this complaint as well, that there's nothing new. I mean, what do we say? There's like 6 stories, and we've just been redoing them again and again and again.
Yep.
As a filmmaker, that's got to be daunting as well. How do you approach that and try to say, okay, we're going to do this, but I've got a different take on this.
Switch it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I think there are about 6 to 10, maybe 12 stories that are constantly told all over Hollywood. And I think just variables, things that are personal to you. So you can still do the Icarus rise and fall story, the concept, but you can switch up the variables. So maybe he's not an Icarus. Maybe he's like a businessman who works to the top. So that's like, Icarus could be compared to possibly a Wolf of Wall Street or something like that. You know? So just variables. I think you can change the variable, and even those stories that are all cookie cutter in their basic form can be switched up and unique.
In science, they say that disproving something or failing an experiment, you learn a lot, almost as much as when you actually succeed in something.
Right.
I'm sure you've had your failures or your difficulties.
Yeah.
What have you learned from them that you employ today when you start shooting something?
I think you learn from your failures that it's going to be tough. Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard to do. It's never going to be 100% like perfect.
Right.
Like there's nothing that's perfect, and once you get used to that, then you can understand that you don't need perfect. What you actually need is what you're going to get on camera, which is what you prepared for. So I think it's going with the flow to an extent, but also having a goal in mind.
Well, it's interesting you say that as far as having that thing in mind and what you get. Have we had this situation where you've had it in mind, you look at the footage and it's like, wow, that's not what I thought. How do you then, through editing or other post-production type things, get it as close to what your vision was as possible? And what have you learned about that?
I actually went through this once because I shot an entire film,
Oh, no.
Holly, and I lost everything. So I had to actually go back and reshoot the whole film, reshoot the entire script, reshoot it.
Oh, no.
But we found much better locations. We found better setups and things like that. And I think it's really tough to handle that, though.
Sure.
Yeah. So when you go to post-production like that, it's you got to hope for the best, really.
Well, and that's where your leadership qualities come in too, because then you've got to rouse
Exactly.
the crew up. Hey, we got to go do this again.
We got to do it again, and that's the worst. That's the worst thing you want to tell an actor. Like, I got it perfect, and I want to do it again. But it's necessary, and I think just kind of just being focused on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and another thing I hear, and I have the same complaint too, as far as modern films, are scripts, and how so many of them are slipshod. They're there just as an excuse for special effects.
Right.
And it always goes back to, especially the films you're talking about from the Golden Age, script is king.
Yeah.
How do you know when your script is ready? How do you know when you're ready to shoot? And how do you get to that point? What's your process there?
It's tough. You have to draft a few times. You have to at least once or twice, just so you can know that you're not putting out like an ignorant script.
Sure.
And it's just off, in what you're trying to do.
Do you ever give it to someone to read?
Yes, that's actually really good. Somebody you can trust, not just anyone, just because some people like movies that aren't good.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
But I think it's really important that you kind of consider your themes for the film, consider what you're trying to do, and make sure that reread your script, reread each chapter, etc., and make sure that your story is exemplifying that.
Sure.
So go back and double check, and just make sure it's all adding up to what you're trying to be.
Well, and then you go to all this pre-production, effort and all that stuff, and then you've got to cast your film. A lot of people, the great ones make it look easy to the point to where someone who's watching can say, "Oh, I could do that."
Right.
And it's not easy.
It's not easy.
It's much more difficult than people realize it, and you have that it factor, that indescribable quality that somehow in front of camera look like a dope, but Bruce Willis in front of camera, he's got that thing.
He's got that thing.
How do you try, when you're casting your film, are you able to see that before you start rolling, or what do you do to look for that and try and find that
Luckily
quality?
for me, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, you're good.
Luckily for me, I I've written a lot of films, but most of my films I'm actually holding for a later time. The ones that I've shot so far, I've written for people specifically. So I've people that I've met, people that I've seen work, I kind of have written them into scripts, and it's gone well so far. So that's kind of what I've been doing for this phase of my career.
Yeah, the film business, like so many things, it's who you know. There's certainly luck involved. I guess this is probably a simple question, but is the film business fair? Why or why not? And how do you make this work for you, or how are you going to?
Right. I think it is fair. I think it's a bit unfair if you were to put it into categories, etc. But I think at the end of the day, if you are meeting the right people, if you are consistently working, if you are honing in on what you're supposed to be doing, like if you're not too scattered, you're spending your time wisely, I think you'll get somewhere. And I think for me, that's what I try and do.
So is it your responsibility as a filmmaker to find and generate an audience, or are you just more concerned with putting out your product and having the audience find you?
I think you have to generate your audience.
And how do you go about doing that then?
Right. At this point in this generation, you have to definitely make your own audience, unless you're in Hollywood and you have Brad Pitt on your cast or Will Smith. So I think to go about doing that, you kind of just have to be on social. You have to be on the internet. You have to be on social media. You kind of got to get in these rooms and talk to people who are maybe not all filmmakers, maybe lawyers, producers, doctors. Just get your name out there and talk to people and let them know what you're doing. And I think, but you definitely have to build your own audience. Like that's 100% important.
So conversely, then, what do you think audiences want, and is that your responsibility to give them what they want?
No. I think my responsibility is to give myself what I want, give the film what it needs to me, and I think the right people will come to it. I think if I chase the audience, then I'm being ingenuous to myself.
Exactly.
And it's tough to actually sustain something when you're doing that.
So what do you think they want these days?
I don't think people know what they want, honestly. I think people just
Other than superhero films?
Other than superhero films, yeah, horror films. That's about all we got lately. But I don't think people know what they want. I think people just kind of wait and see what they're getting, and then they say, okay, this is good or not. So I think you just kind of got to do what you do and then present it.
Well, and so much of that within the last 10, 15 years has been generated by social media. As far as generating audiences, getting your product out there. How do you use social media as far as your filmmaking is concerned, whether as far as making it or promoting it?
I try and make sure I'm following. I get my movie page up. I try and make sure I'm following all the cast members, all the crew. Make sure that we're all kind of have an idea of what if we can post, send out pictures to all my cast and crew. Maybe we can get some promotion going. I'm trying to promote through the entire process. So through pre-production, production, post-production, you're going to be trying to promote the entire time, and that's just building your audience. That's building excitement for your film. You're dropping clips, trailers, etc. And that's just going to help you when the film comes. People won't be like, okay, I know what that is, but I haven't really heard of it, because you've said it 100 times up until that point.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So do you think filmmakers have any sort of social responsibility? And if so, how are you aware of that, and how do you deal with that? I mean, I think I'm thinking of someone like Lars von Trier, who goes out of his way to shock, seems to go out of his way to upend society, whichever one he has to be in. What's your view on that, and what's your stance as far as from a filmmaker that's concerned? For
sure, and I think for what Lars von Trier did, I think that's. I think he did that maybe because that's his truth, and that's what he maybe sees the world as truly. So I think as a filmmaker, we all have to say our truth, and that's going to be really important. Even if it's not necessarily, that goes back to the last question, what the audience wants compared to what you want. I think you have to put your truth onto film. You have to, and even if it's not like your bare bones, like existence, it has to be a semblance of what you truly feel. Sure. So I think that's really important.
So, but should you be aware as you're a filmmaker if you're approaching certain hot button issues? Would you personally shy away from those, or do you embrace them? issues of racism, issues of gun control, whatever that might be.
I think if you have those in mind, you should lean into them actually. Just because controversy is not necessarily a bad thing in film, and it'll help you kind of get a little more eyes. But also, if that's what you're leaning into, then you shouldn't be afraid of it. Like if that's what you're kind of going for, then you should just embrace it and accept it for what it is, because it's probably going to help your film. To be honest. Yeah.
DeShawn Hill?
Yes, sir.
Thanks for talking to me.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.
Hey, come on out now. I said come out now, you're already caught. Where's the other one?
She didn't go anywhere. She's just...
Shut up! So, where's she at? Nothing, huh? Okay.